Hey everybody, welcome to Sit Down. I'm DJ Sixsmith. Kate Flannery in the house. Kate, great to have you here. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. Actress, performer, I mean, you do a little bit of everything. Musician.
Yeah, singing. Yeah.
And that's the reason why you're here in New York. So what's it been like performing at the Cafe Carlyle this week?
It's been almost like somebody hit me in the head with a sandbag and I'm having a dream. Is that too old of a reference?
No, I think that's perfect.
Yeah. It's really been insane because Jane and I have been singing together for like 4 years, and you know we've played some great places, we've played some not so great places, but this is the Mecca. This is it, and we actually get to stay at the hotel, which is like. At any point, I feel like someone's going to tap me on the shoulder and give me a tray and tell me that table 5 needs another drink.
But it's awesome because you and Jane have been friends for 30 years. We were just talking about that before.
Yeah.
So just take me through that relationship. How'd you guys first cross paths, and what's it been like performing together?
Well, the very first time I ever went to Second City, my aunt gave me a ticket to check out Chicago and Second City because she thought it would be a good fit when I graduated college. And the first time I ever went to Second City, Jane Lynch was understudying. So she was on stage. She was understudying for an actress, Bonnie Hunt, and I just remember that night so well because I everything about it I just fell in love with immediately, and I couldn't believe that there was a place that you could just play and get paid and get to have just and like actually have a career.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, and then I ended up like 2 years later. I did a show. I ended up taking class at Second City. I got hired by them, and then I did another show at another theater called the Annoyance Theater, and I was Jane's understudy in a show called the Real Life Brady Bunch. And then the show actually ended up coming to New York off Broadway, the Village Gate, and so I was kind of back and forth between Chicago and New York at that time. I wasn't living here then, but yeah, but we knew each other then. We also did sketch shows together, and we used to sing in the sketch shows and. So it's like been this weird thread that kind of didn't make any sense at the beginning, but now it makes complete sense. Yeah.
And it's awesome because at that point in your life and your career, you have a platform and a place where you can just try out different things. And you're with a lot of talented people.
Yes.
So when you think about Second City, what was the most important lesson that you learned?
Well, for me, getting the job was so amazing because it felt like a huge validation. But I also realized that it wasn't the only job on the planet. Like sometimes I feel like we make gods out of these jobs that we give them more power than they have, and and I got to express myself in other theaters in Chicago too, and kind of do my own thing, and I created like a dying lounge act that I'm still doing. I think it's just a matter of realizing that it's like the jobs are not running the show, we're running, it's like, I don't know, I'm not making any sense.
It doesn't define you is what you're saying,
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, whatever you do, are just so work focused, and sometimes we even elevate people who do certain things, but at the same time, we're just all people trying to figure out what we do best and trying to be the best versions of ourselves.
That's beautifully put.
Thank you.
And it's funny because like years later, because I when I was at Second City, Steve Carell was there, and Stephen Colbert, and Amy Sedaris, Nia Vardalos, so many great people.
Tim Meadows,
Dave Koechner, so many great people. And then I just remember when we were doing press here for the upfronts at 30 Rock, I remember one of the cast members at 30 Rock, Scott Adsit, we toured together at Second City. So here it was like a weird like you just never know where you're gonna run into somebody again. It's kind of like, I don't know, it's nuts. It's
wild because we were talking off camera before. It's really hard to get into this industry, but once you break in, the relationships that you have can really define your career. So even thinking about your career, whether it's the people you knew at Second City, you're performing now, those relationships have really impacted you going forward.
That's really true. And actually, I do have a support system in LA with some older, former Second City actresses like Nia Vardalos and Susie Nakamura and Rose Abdou. There's a few of us that we just have a shorthand, and there's a no douchebag factor for that.
I think that's a good lesson for life.
Yeah,
I like that
it's
one.
true. And there's people that you can, that you feel like they're not listening to your stories, so they can take your job, step over your dying corpse. There's a lot of that, unfortunately.
Yeah, and
the stakes are high.
No, it's a pretty wacky industry when you think about it, because we were talking before, like you can have people that are doing it for a long time, and things just don't hit.
Yes.
And for you, you're at Second City, you're touring around, and then The Office comes into your life.
Right, but I also waited tables a lot between
Right.
Second City and, I mean, it was a long road.
So you're waiting tables
it's like
in
13 years later,
Wow.
I got The Office. Yeah.
So you're waiting tables in New York for those couple of years. I
Yep.
mean, was there a moment where you're thinking maybe I'd try something else? I mean, were you that gung ho on doing it for the rest of your life?
Well, there's such a myth of that actor waiter thing that I wasn't too unfazed or discouraged.
Right.
I just and then when I ended up moving back to LA shortly after New York, I remember learning very quickly that you don't have an audition and you don't have a job if you can't make a shift. So I was sick a lot and I had car trouble. So I remember I worked with Billy Crystal's daughter and she got a movie of the week and she had to start the next day. And she couldn't cover her shift, so she got fired. And I was like, oh, note to self, note to self, note to self, whatever you got to do, I don't recommend lying, but whatever.
They're probably wondering, man, what's going on with Kate's car? I mean,
What an idiot.
just called a lot
Get
about
in
it.
the car. Yeah,
So obviously you had the time in Chicago and New York and LA, but going all the way back, growing up in Pennsylvania,
Yep,
how did you
Philadelphia,
first
yeah.
become involved in the arts and just, who are some people you kind of looked up to early
Well,
on?
I always wanted to be an actor as a kid, and my mother was having none of it, thank God. Because I would read, they used to have auditions in the paper, and I'd be like, I'm going to take 3 buses to go to that dinner theater audition. And, so I think when I was 13, Annie came out on Broadway, so I became obsessed because a lot of the actresses were from Philadelphia, so they were in the paper all the time, and I used to have a little scrapbook. And I found out that one of their voice teachers lived right near me.
Oh, wow.
So I asked my mother for voice lessons, and she said, you already have piano and tap. Your sister only has swimming. That's it. Done. So I actually started working at a Chinese restaurant one night a week.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, I think.
How old were you?
Right before I turned 14, so I was like just 13. But
You were just like barely on the legal
but
line.
yeah,
there.
well, it was a bring your own bottle place. There was no
Right.
booze, and I would clean I did the takeout, and I would clear the tables. I was like a busgirl. I wore a little Chinese jacket. A bunch of white girls working. I don't know why.
But that was a great life lesson for you early
It
on.
was,
If
it
you want to
was.
do this, you have to do a little something else.
It's true. And I feel like, and then I eventually ended up getting a job at that dinner theater when I was a senior in high school.
Wow.
So I felt like a child star because I got to leave on Wednesdays after 4th period because I had a matinee. But again, like I feel like everything was right side. I'm glad, I just, there's so much pressure for kids who are actors, and, my mother was sort of like, appropriately protective, I think.
Yeah, and you have kids at a young age that become successful, don't know how to deal with it,
Yeah.
don't have the infrastructure. And,
Right.
for somebody like you had done some stuff early on in your life, but you had this longer period where you're growing as a person, and then you're more prepared for that as opposed to a kid that's 12, 14, that's a, megastar.
This is absolutely true, and this is why I got The Office when I was 40, which I think was the right time, because I
Yeah.
probably would have... I would have got seriously, because people, you think like, this is it, because when you get a show, sometimes people, they drop everything or they buy a big house, and it doesn't always work out. You don't know.
Yeah.
So I actually kept my restaurant job through the first season of The Office because I didn't know.
Well, that's really interesting because David Denman was here a couple months back, and he was saying, early on, people weren't sure if The Office would be a hit.
We were not. Nope. No, it
That
was only
first
6
season,
episodes.
yeah,
It was such a short
nothing.
season. And I remember Friends had just ended, so Joey was on, and Joey was not the hit that they expected. So between Joey not doing well and Steve Carell doing the 40-Year-Old Virgin, somehow there was room for us. And of course, Jane Lynch was in the 40-Year-Old Virgin, so
Right.
all things come
It
back
all
to
comes
Kate
back.
and Jane. We were controlling the universe of show business in a strange, small way.
Well, it's interesting because when you think about The Office, 2 main factors: the success of the 40-Year-Old Virgin,
Yep.
and then what David was saying was that back in the mid-2000s, people were downloading your show on iTunes,
Right.
which was a big thing
It was
then.
new. I
And
remember-
so
yeah.
NBC was like, okay, maybe the ratings aren't there, but people seem to be interested
This is
in
true.
it.
And I remember they couldn't figure out how to pay us for digital content because we used to do webisodes
Right.
that they said were promotional, but the union didn't even have a place for it, so they ended up giving us all iPods. This is like back the first iPod, like it weighed 14 pounds, and you could,
It's like a brick in your
literally,
pocket,
you
right?
could stop your door with it. It was fantastic. Break a window. But that was like our payment, and then since then the industry's completely still behind but catching up. But yeah, crazy,
Yeah,
crazy. So yeah, so I
unbelievable.
feel like our show was really pioneer for so many things.
Yeah, it was a perfect
Yeah.
time for that show. And like you said, you're 40 years old, and how did you even get that audition? And what were
I
those
had an
initial
initial
days
audition for the part of Jan.
like? Okay.
Clearly, they went another way.
I don't know if I could see you playing Jan.
Yeah,
it
I
was such
couldn't
a
either. I
distinct
couldn't
role, and
either.
just because you did Meredith in such an amazing way.
Well, thank you. Thank
know?
you. And actually, I just remember feeling like I didn't know. I didn't even know if I was going to get to do it the next week. I wasn't. I just was taking it one episode at a time. I didn't really. I wasn't. It felt like. It felt so experimental in a way that I wasn't even sure that I was going to get to come back every week. And we didn't. The first season, our computers didn't work. They told us to bring paperwork.
Really?
They wanted us to improvise so that the cameras could improvise, so we would always be working and not be like acting working. We'd just be like doing things like paperwork.
Right.
So I brought like my tax stuff and
might as well get some work done.
I did. I absolutely did. It was kind of crazy, but it was really fun, and it was just awesome to be. Part of something like that was improvisational on every level, like even silently improvisational.
And I think the amazing thing about that show is that every character has an impact, and just such a deep, talented cast of characters.
But I'll tell you, I felt really lucky because they were very slow according to some people, for the chess game that was Meredith. I feel like I didn't know what the plan was. I don't even know if they did at first, but I just loved that it was just like little incremental moves, like just kind of slowly, as opposed to like suddenly a character completely changes and morphs. I feel like I just kind of slowly grew into what this like insanity. And I'm also really proud that after 9 seasons, they never gave up on on Meredith's like purpose.
Yeah.
Like she was always still peripheral, but impactful. Lots of physical comedy still.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I hate when they start, like characters kind of jump their own individual shark and like something they start talking too much or they're too different. And they never let me sing on the show. They actually said Meredith doesn't sing. I mean, I sang a little bit with Pam at the Lice episode, or like Michael's Last 90s, but you couldn't, but I totally respected that because I grew up watching Happy Days and I thought it was always weird when the character Potsy was suddenly singing and he sounded completely different. It was like what?
Right, it's like kind of gimmicky.
It was bad. It was just like, who is this? Yeah. But so I'm glad that they didn't turn me into a cheese ball.
So
I've done it to myself personally.
So how long did it take you to feel comfortable with the show and with your character?
I'm still getting there.
How are you still getting there?
I'm just kidding. A couple of years. I feel like actually season 4, once Meredith got hit by the car, I was like, okay, now
I'm here
we're
to
off
stay.
To the races. Yes. Because sometimes we would read a script and I wouldn't have a line, or they'd write my storyline later. Or I'd have just a couple lines, or a line.
Right.
So one time I had a word in an episode.
One word.
Yep. And and then you go to say, you're like,
But your lines were always impactful. Like you and Creed were over in that corner,
right?
And it always worked. And
yeah, well,
you guys killed me with those lines.
It was always worth the wait.
Yeah.
And I feel like some actors really count their lines before, I mean, immediately when they get their script and they freak out if they're not. They feel like, but I really learned to trust right away. Maybe because I'm an idiot, but I'm a happy idiot. So it was the greatest.
So you've worked with a lot of different crews. I've been on a lot of different sets. What was different about The Office?
Well, we had a place to sit. I mean, literally, you had a desk to go to, so it kind of felt like a desk job in a great way. So when you got out of hair and makeup, you could just go to your desk. And our computers finally worked after season 2. So you could kind of do stuff, and I had the most comfortable wardrobe. I mean, my mother wasn't happy with it, but whatever.
You didn't have to put on makeup. You just rolled into
the office.
I
did have makeup.
You had some makeup.
It took hours to make me look like that.
Really?
Are you kidding me? No, I'm just kidding. But actually, it did take a long time.
Right.
You'd be surprised. And my hair was much redder than it looked because the fluorescent lights sort of washed it out. So I got a Happy Meal with my last dye job on that show. I was like super crazy bright, but it was fun,
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the greatest. I mean, really, and we had the best directors. We had all these movie directors and of course, just like watching Steve do what he does, which is like he's an amazing actor. He's not just a funny comic dude who is holding court and that vibe of a so many sitcoms. It's just about like the one lead and everyone sort of getting out of the way. But Steve was thoughtful, great listener, really, really just an amazing actor, and had 5 different takes for every choice. Like he had so many choices.
Right. So when you think about your relationships with the cast now, like you guys still keep in touch, you're hanging out with people.
We do. Yeah,
how cool has it been to keep those relationships going?
It sucks. It's exhausting. It's fantastic. No, everybody's great. It's just weird. It's weird because you want to have the same closeness, but you can't because we don't see each other that much.
You can never do it again like that.
You can't. Yeah. So bye guys. We're done. I'm just kidding.
Never gonna see you again.
No, but it's there's something that we share together that was really, in my opinion, very sacred and wonderful, and I'm just glad that younger audiences are still responding in such a. I mean, they're finding The Office and falling in love in such a big way, that even bigger than when we first aired.
And that's really interesting too, because it's a whole younger generation that didn't watch it while it was on TV.
Right.
They're watching it for the first time, and now people are coming up and saying, "Hey, I love Meredith," or this, that, and the other thing.
Well, it's funny because as we were like the first downloadable show, iTunes show, now we're like the first like really, I mean, just. And not the first, but one of the first Netflix where people just literally like, I go to sleep to you every night. I watch you
I binge it all the time.
Yeah, I watch you in my sleep. What? But yeah, but it's true though. Yeah, and it's you know, I mean, it's surprising and wonderful, and so they feel very connected, and you know, nobody's thrown anything at me. Everybody's been really nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
and it's one of those shows you can just kind of watch any episode and just jump right in. You know.
Yeah.
I think that's the interesting part. Like, I had watched it while I was on TV, and my girlfriend had never watched it, so I went through the entire show with her, and it was like remembering things, but at the same time, just kind of jumping into seasons and being like, I know I'm in for a good time. I know I'm gonna laugh.
Right.
You know.
Right. Well, it's so full. You know, we used to overshoot a little bit. We shot 40 pages. It only ended up being, you know, a 22-minute show at the time. But you know, there's some stuff that was deleted, but I felt like it made it feel like a movie almost, because there's just so much going on, and they just told stories so well. And you know, I mean, we had like Paul Feig was one of our directors. You know, Harold Ramis, Jason Reitman, J.J. Abrams, Joss Whedon. I mean, so many great
incredible
Jon Favreau,
talents,
like crazy, like mind blowing. Like yeah. So yeah, I feel like who knows if I'll ever have an experience that wonderful, but I don't know. Segue back to the Carlyle. That's one of the greatest experiences too.
Yeah.
Just being like in this iconic space with, you know, the history of people that have performed there, where you just go, oh my God, I can't believe we get to do this, and people actually are liking what we're doing.
Totally.
It's kind of nuts.
Yeah, and you know, you have that big show, you hit on that, and it's cool that you get to do this in an entirely separate category. Like you said, you didn't sing on the show.
Right.
You get to sing at one of the most iconic places in New York with somebody you've known for 30 years.
Yep.
And you're thinking about all the people that have been there. It's pretty incredible when you put it in perspective.
It's absolutely true. So if somebody, you know, I mean, if somebody were to, you know, I mean, it's like place your bets. I would have lost this bet a long time ago. I never would have guessed that this would have happened.
And I think it's also great because, like you said, you got The Office when you were 40.
Yep.
Women are having much more longevity in their careers, whereas a couple decades ago.
Thanks to Botox. Thanks so much. I've had so much work done since The Office, you guys. Really.
But I just love the fact that there's no timetable like there used to be, you know?
Well, right. Well, and you know what? There still is a time, but it's not as intense as it used to be. And I think we just keep breaking down that. Whenever somebody tries to put that wall back up, you just gotta go. All right.
Right. You look at Betty White and you're like, you're still going. You know?
Yeah,
it's like we're gonna keep this thing rolling.
No,
you know?
I mean Betty's like, holy moly, man! I'll have what she's having.
Yeah. What is she eating every day, right?
No kidding. But I feel like also what's nice is that I feel like, you know, once you do a long run of a show that people actually care about, it's nice to just, as an artist, just kind of focus on stuff that like really makes you feel good inside.
No doubt.
And
yeah.
I've been writing too recently, and that I was always intimidated as an actor because I had an opinion about actors who write. I'm like, oh yeah, they're so brilliant. Yeah, I got a great idea. You know, because there's such a stereotype about that.
Sure.
Like, where basically someone else is, you know, is really writing it, and you're just talking. Mm-hmm. But I think, you know, for me, just kind of looking at a life that has been, you know, thus far like, at times very literary, because, you know, it took turns that I wasn't expecting. And, you know, I mean, my dad used to own an Irish bar in Philadelphia, and we used to go to the bar on Sundays because we cleaned on Sundays. That was like the thing. Although I was one of the youngest, so I didn't have to clean as much as my older siblings would be like, you never clean, you know. But my dad owned the rooms above the bar, so he had a lot of boarders, and if they couldn't make the rent, he'd let them work it off. So we always had a lot of alcoholics, like, you know, cutting the grass, you know, wallpaper paste, putting up a shelf, painting, you know. My dad was kind of the friend of the forgotten man.
Right.
So so I come by playing an alcoholic, very honestly. You know.
You had a little exposure to it.
Absolutely. There's really only one woman that used to drink at the bar, but and the bus driver used to knock on the bar door to make sure she wouldn't miss the bus.
That's a good bus driver.
I know, right?
My bus driver would have just left me in New Jersey. Are you kidding me?
Oh my God, it was kind of like our town in Philadelphia.
So when you think about everything that's gone down this week at the Carlyle, what's been the best part of the experience?
Well, I think getting to stay there, and also I had an issue with my voice. Like I got like a little frog in my throat, and so I had to be really quiet. And I'm like, and when I'm in New York, I'm usually everywhere. Like when I lived here, I was everywhere.
Right.
You know, so it's actually been nice to just sort of be a little more still and like centered, and I don't know. That's somebody. I take a picture. It doesn't last long. It's not usually me, but it's been a gift. And so I actually get to appreciate every show and the musicians we work with are fantastic, and we get to kind of push ourselves creatively in a way. Like I'm going a little bit out of my comfort zone for the show, but that's okay, you know.
No, I think that's an important thing to do, whether it's the writing or the music or just life itself. Just pushing those boundaries a little bit. You may be afraid of it at first, but
yeah, no,
it ends up benefiting you.
I totally have it, because I feel like when I sing, I usually always have like what I call the comedy parachute. Like it has to be a little funny, and sometimes it can be a little, but you can actually. I don't know. It's very humbling, because there's so many great musicians, and I'm just glad that we kind of fill this slot that is not offending anybody, but also people are enjoying. I mean, it's
your own thing too. You put your own twist on it.
It's true, but I do feel like there's a sense of earning. Like I feel like if we had just started singing and like 6 months later with the Carlyle, it wouldn't mean so much.
Right.
It's been 4 years, 4.5 years, and we did a Christmas album together that's
right.
done very well, and we did a little Christmas tour last year. We're doing a huge Christmas tour this year.
Nice.
We're going to like 20 cities.
Oh, wow.
Or whatever, something like that. But we'll be on I always call it a rock and roll bus. Rock and roll.
Rock and roll never dies.
It'll be like more like a Whoopi Goldberg tour bus. I don't know, but we'll see.
Whatever it is, it's going to be a blast.
I've been on Whoopi Goldberg. What do I know?
I don't even know what would go down on a Whoopi Goldberg tour bus, but I think it would be amazing.
I don't think we're going to smoke as much pot. But that's okay.
So
I just outed her.
Hey, you know what? It's all good. Right. So you've been living in Los Angeles for a long time.
I have, yeah.
So,
almost, oh my God, 19 years. I can't believe it.
So what do you miss the most about New York City?
I think the lack of show business here. It's such that town is such a one chap. It's a one industry town, and sometimes
it's all Hollywood.
Like, yeah. Which is why I live in K-Town, because it's it's way more diverse, and it's not the only thing on the menu. So, but when I got recognized at the K-Town Mall, I was like, there goes the neighborhood.
Time to go somewhere else.
No, but it's I call it like my fake New York life, because the architecture is really old, and I live in an old 1920s building that went condo, and like I have a great view of downtown, and I can look at my neighbors. It's very rear window next door. That's a little single apartment.
It gives you your slice of real life in a place that may not have so much reality sometimes.
It does, and just obviously like a sense of humanity too.
Normalcy.
I think New York is it's filled with human beings, and if you don't notice, then you're on drugs. I don't know.
So you mentioned the fact that you're writing, you're doing your music thing.
Yeah.
Are there other things you'd like to do that you haven't done yet?
Well, the writing scares me the most. I shouldn't even say it on camera until something actually exists.
What scares you the most about the writing as you're starting to do it?
Like I said, I think it's like the actor-writer thing who's like, patting themselves on the back. But also, I think it's something that I wish I had pursued when I was younger, like even studied more, and I never gave myself the space to do it. Yeah, so I was extremely hard on myself. And I have friends that have like written books and like even later in life that have done very well and kind of started late. So who knows? I mean, I know there's many people that start acting later.
Yeah, totally.
And then completely excel and have a great career, or even just a great artistry with it. Doesn't even matter if other people, are paying attention.
Yeah, you just want to make an impact with your work, and I think at every stage of your career, you've been able to do that. So go for the writing.
In a strange way, yeah. But it's but things are great. I mean, I met my boyfriend on The Office, and he's been at NBC for 32 years, and I just feel like it's nice to have someone who is on the journey with you, who gets it. And he used to. I mean, I met him on The Office.
Right.
I mean, he was there for most of the really important episodes he shot, and he shot all of when Michael Scott was leaving. So, so we get to share this thing that and actually he's in the finale of The Office. He's dancing with me with Meredith at Dwight and Angela's wedding.
That's
and
awesome.
Also he's the photographer when they reveal Pam's mural.
Oh, okay. Yep.
So he actually has a line. So he's starting to get recognized for.
Chris is like, yes, it's my time.
It's true. It's crazy. So I feel like for me, I had I don't know, I got a show and a guy. That never happens.
You had an actual office romance.
I did.
Pretty awesome.
I did. crazy, right?
No doubt about it.
I wish everybody I like the same thing, and everybody I don't like.
Before I let you go, you got to do SNL in a small way back in the 90s.
Oh, I auditioned for it.
You auditioned for it.
You know what? I did.
You did the voice, right?
I did a voice for,
right.
Yes, for Robert Smigel. Actually, it was in 2002 or 2003.
A little bit later, okay.
It was later.
Yeah.
I think it was like 12 years later. But yeah, I got to play Lucy in the Charlie Brown Christmas episode that for Saturday TV Funhouse. I think Al Gore was the host, and Fish was the musical guest.
Wow.
Not that I remember it.
But who's counting, right?
But I had auditioned for SNL in like 1991 and didn't get it, and I was like, I at first felt like, oh no, like, that was it. Like I blew it. Like I'll have no career in comedy. And then, you know, I was auditioning for sketch shows, and I think it was like 97. I auditioned for the Dana Carvey show, and I tested for it, and ultimately Steve Carell and Steve Colbert booked that.
Right.
But I remember Robert Smigel was a producer on that, and then he had remembered me, and then just like booked me out of the blue for an SNL cartoon. So I was like, it was so fun, and we got to record at Capitol Records in LA, which is so iconic, and it was fun. Yeah. So that's been my small little SNL.
Yeah, you got to do SNL, Second City. I mean, there's not too many people that have been able to say that, right?
Well, that's actually, there's been a lot of people. No, I'm just kidding. There's been plenty of Second City SNL people, but yeah, no, just to, and you know, it's funny. I definitely believe in the less is more thing. It's like, you know, it's like you don't. I don't know. It's like you don't need to be soaking in it. You know, it's like everything's. It's all relative, and I don't know. I feel suddenly strangely embarrassed about that. I don't know.
No, you shouldn't feel embarrassed about it. It was a part of the story, you know?
It's true. No, and I know a lot of really, really awesome people were up for SNL and didn't get it. And, you know, but also, like, through lots of therapy, I realized, like, it is an honor just to be nominated, just to be recognized. Because so few people actually get seen for that.
Yeah.
So it is like an acknowledgement, like, okay, you're on the right path. And I remember waiting tables once, and one of the producers saw me. This was like probably a year before The Office, and Tina Fey was with him, and he said, "Hey, don't give up. Like, don't." I was like, "No." I was, you know, thank you. Like, it was a really sweet thing to say. And then he's actually one of the producers of Seth Meyers now.
Oh wow.
Mike Shoemaker, and I see him once in a while, and that meant a lot to me at the time. So it's like these people that sort of show up incrementally in your career to just go, like, don't compare yourself to other people. Don't stop. Don't give up. And that's, you know, I really could say that to anybody, because why not you?
Yeah.
You know.
No, it's a beautiful story of persistence.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Thank God.
Yeah.
Because nobody really wants to hear your stories when you don't make it.
That's Kate Flannery, ladies and gentlemen. She'll be at Cafe Carlyle. Kate, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, DJ.
We'll see you next time here on The Sit Down.